first episode of the Five at the Back podcast, where we'll be talking a lot about the world of football. We'll be delving in quite a bit on Football Manager itself, seeing as that's the sort of thing that's brought all four of us together. And we're also living from two continents as well. We've got two of us from Europe, the UK to be exact, and there's two living in North America. And I mean, we might as well just go right in and get the topics off. So I guess the first thing to do would probably be to introduce us like one by one. So hi, my name is Ali, or some of you might know me as Alistair. I regularly stream on Twitch, and that's where I met some of these boys. All the socials will be in the bottom right. So yeah, good to start something. I'm very excited about starting this, to be fair, lads, because I've talked about it to a few people. I feel like it's been long overdue. I feel like it's been like a month since we planned this. But yeah, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent. I'll pass on to whoever wants to go next.
All right, my name is Rish. I'm from the United States, and I'm a writer, a college student, and I run a media company. You can check all that stuff out in the description below. I'm excited to do this. The club I support is Loudoun United, which is a small second division team here in the United States. But the club which actually made me fall in love with the game is Liverpool. So always got to have a special place in my heart for the Reds. And man, Klopp is a god.
Come on, you Blues. It's all about Everton here. And that is my favorite club. And I'm John Boyer. And Stick Piano is what people know me as on Twitch. Loyal to the stick is, quite the hashtag on a couple of the streams here. But yeah, no, I'm just really excited to also get involved and, talk about Football Manager and all the things that have brought us together. I think all four of us play Football Manager relatively regularly, and certainly where we all met, just like Ali was saying. And, I'm a 42-year-old dad of two who's been playing Football Manager for 20 years. So that's pretty much what I'm bringing to the table at this point as well. But also, down with the Reds, up with the Blues.
Yeah, and last but not least, I'm Nahian. I support United. For a living, I work as an analyst for devices, but in my spare time, I analyze football.
I felt like I should have got in there. I'm a Manchester United fan as well, so we got a few differing opinions. At least me, Nahian, and Stick and John, should I say, not Stick Piano, can
it's whatever, man. You
can join together. Me and the boys can stick together against Rish.
All right, boys. But today we got a few topics. We got Barcelona's finances and the insane situation which one of the biggest clubs finds itself in, where it's probably going bankrupt very, very soon. Hayan, why don't you take us away with that story?
So they've been given a deadline to cut its wages. Well, actually, that was at the beginning of the month. This sort of fiasco is still ongoing, with many of their players being on too high of a wage. So if you take their contract length, effectively they're expected to run out of cash. And so I was wondering all of your opinions on the biggest football club, arguably it is one of the biggest football clubs in the world.
So here's the thing. Barcelona makes more money, right? They have the highest revenue out of every single club in the world. It's over 800 million. So for them to be running out of money, shout out Joseph Bartomeu, right?
It has to be that, because ultimately you've got the biggest club in the world. You've got revenue sources coming left, right, and center. You look at a team like Manchester United, and the thing that's really I'll go British Tim on this. The thing that really miffs me off about United is they have like pen sponsors, they have tractor sponsors, they have a sponsor for literally everything. If Manchester United in their current state are capable of that, how is a club like Barcelona just running out of money? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever to me.
I think it's better to go to the thing that caused their problems. So what would your opinions be on the signings that they've made?
Well, the wage structure is just out of control, right? They're just writing blank checks for 30-year-old players that have been there for forever, and not reinvesting in youth, which is what got them in the first place. They put so much of that revenue into La Masia's academy, and watch those players grow from all over the world, and especially from inside of Spain. The contracts are just out of control. I can't imagine there's any other real cost. There's the COVID-related ticket income declining, but like outside of that, the revenues are pretty stable because they're all from sponsors that are under multi-year contracts to be giving that amount of revenue to Barcelona. The thing that's increasing is the contracts.
Yeah, I mean, there's currently a massive case going on where Barcelona basically gave Neymar 10 million euros out of just nowhere. Like, it was a mistake and they gave him 10 million euros. How do you make a mistake that big? And now they're going to take him to court yet again to grab every single penny they can out of that big mistake which they made themselves.
I think it's weird. For example, like for example, Messi's wages, like they're so insanely out of the world, and he's gonna have left, right, center bonus in there, and that's the case with a lot of the sort of Asian players. You know, like Gerard Piqué is probably on something similar, and I think the worst thing about it is going back to sort of what Nahyan was saying about, you know, and John about, you know, putting these aging players on high contracts is you're letting players like Arthur go, and you're replacing him with another aging player who's probably going to be demanding a similar astronomical fee, and the payoff from a competitive standpoint isn't there. Maybe it's that. Do you think that maybe they were maybe hoping for a little bit more money coming in from, you know, potentially winning Champions Leagues and winning leagues titles, but because of Bartomeu's just poor running, it's just not happened?
No,
I have
you
a
know,
question for Nahian. I have a question for Nahian. Do you think that it's going to be a good thing? Like, I kind of feel like bankruptcy's got to be a good thing. They're going to have to let people go. They're going to have to rebuild behind like Ansu Fati and Mariba and Pedri. Like, the next generation is in place. Like, is there a chance that this is a good thing for them to go bankrupt?
For Barcelona itself, no. Although it gives them a chance to rebuild, I don't think that they're certainly going to fall very much behind. The youth players are going to struggle. It's very rare. They had Pep, and they did it with Pep. They won 2 Champions Leagues with Pep, and a few youth players, but they still had players like Messi, Iniesta, Xavi, Abidal. They had a lot of established players, but the sort of rebuild from nothing, once you have to cut a lot of costs, is quite difficult.
I mean, they won't have nothing. They'll certainly still have some people that
Yeah, absolutely.
will be that bridge. I don't know. I think those people are not getting minutes now. Those players aren't getting enough minutes.
I have a question for John, like based off what you said. So you're saying, you know, it might allow players like Ansu Fati and Mariba to potentially thrive, right? If you're Ansu Fati and Barcelona go bankrupt, why would you stay there? Surely,
I mean,
surely.
It depends. Like, he came through that academy, right? So, like, how culturally tied is he to being known as the person who saved Barcelona?
That's
Right?
true.
That's like the
On that
position
point,
you find yourself
Well,
in.
surely there's going to be a decent, lucrative offer which Barcelona might turn their heads at, because, you know, we've already established that the management is very poor there. So surely a team will be interested in Ansu Fati. And I mean, if you take a look at what happened with the Rangers and they got bankrupt, down the leagues they went, sort of thing. If a similar thing happens to Barcelona, you as Ansu Fati, are you really going to sacrifice 3, 4, 5, however many years out of your career, rather than just jump ship and have success?
See, the one thing is with the way bankruptcy is going to work with Barcelona, and I don't know the specific bankruptcy laws of Spain, and particularly of Catalonia, but basically the idea which has been in discussion now is that Barcelona follow a similar model to Fiorentina. When Fiorentina went bankrupt, I think in 2012, what they did was they basically created a new holding company, shifted all the Fiorentina assets under that holding company, and allowed the previous holding company to just go bankrupt. And Barcelona will basically follow that same model, creating a brand new holding company and then shifting everything underneath that holding company, allowing the previous one to go bankrupt. But here's the problem with that. This new holding company is not going to have the same credit rating that the previous one did. In fact, it's going to have a more difficult time finding people who are going to loan it money. Barcelona needs money right now for 2 things. The first one, they want to renovate the Camp Nou, and that project now has to be put on hold. The other thing which they need to basically take care of is the fact that there's players like Ousmane Dembele and Philippe Coutinho and Antoine Griezmann who were bought for enormous, massive sums, and suddenly and are enormous wages themselves, and you have to pay them. Right now, Barcelona, we saw this situation where Barcelona the playing squad of Barcelona and the management of Barcelona basically went on a war against each other over a 70% wage cut, right? So that they can pay the rest of their staff. And already we saw someone like Messi come out and basically fight Barcelona's board, which we've never seen from him before. You know, he's a very introverted person. So for him to come out like this, it shows what's going to basically happen in the future. A very difficult and rough time.
Yeah, and I think if you're going to relate it back to Fiorentina, the fact is Fiorentina have never really recovered from that. You know, you look at somebody like Federico Chiesa, who is now pretty much on his way to Juventus, obviously on the loan, and they've got arguably a very, very good price for what could be a really, really good Italian talent. And yeah, you look at some of Fiorentina's dealings recently. You know, they have a lot of players loaned in and loaned out. Some players are really, really good quality. You know, if you look at years gone by, like Veretout, who was a very, very good central midfielder, did well at Fiorentina. You know, loaned out the season after, and they've had multiple loan signings in. It just seems to be a bit of a, I mean, I don't know how else to say it, shit show from Fiorentina. And if that's the sort of thing that we're going to expect, then will we ever see this sort of giant Barcelona, biggest club in the world sort of thing ever again? Do you think it's possible for them to recover, to be back on top in Spain when you've got the likes of Atletico and Real Madrid there? Or, you know, if they can't go back on the top in Spain, then they're never going to really get back in, you know, a European sense in terms of Champions Leagues or anything like that.
Well, football is cyclical, right? Clubs rise and fall. Just look at AC Milan right now. You know, 2013, they have money problems. They go down massively. They go down hard, right? They stop qualifying for Europe itself. And now they're kind of on the come up. They're, I think, first in Serie A right now.
Yeah. 6 wins, 2 draws in 8 games.
Yeah, so Barcelona will definitely have this fall. They will have their downturn, right? They've had their peaks, and amazing peak, right? One of the best teams of all time. And now it's time for them to go into that slump. And players like Ansu Fati and players like Moriba, these extremely talented world-class youngsters who have a very bright future ahead of them, they're probably going to be like, okay, do I want to stay and be part of this slump, be part of the fall, and then maybe if I'm around long enough, be also part of the rise? Or do I want to go to a club which is already on the rise or is already on the top and try to make my name over there? And I think that's the real question which arises when it comes to these young guys at Barcelona.
I mean, you also have to understand that there's a lot of uncertainty around these players. They might not even be good enough to be part of that rise.
Exactly.
And that's a big gamble, because if it doesn't pay off, you're left with a very few options on how you can move forward.
That being said, though, I think the allure of playing for Barcelona will still be something that a lot of players, particularly our age and younger, you know, they'll always have that appeal. It's the same with, I guess any club. If you take a look at the Premier League in terms of, you know, Manchester United right now, Liverpool in years gone by, they've still been able to, you know, attract the Xavi Alonso's, attract the Fernando Torres, attract players like Paul Pogba and Bruno Fernandes, despite being on that downturn because of the team they once were. So is it that much of a gamble in that sense then? These clubs are still capable of attracting sort of decent talent. Whether they pay off or not is a different question, but they're able to attract some of the hottest prospects, let's say, of a generation, where you do have the likes of Barcelona and Real Madrid interested in some of those players at the times that they were sold. Is it safe? Is it going to be that risky for Barcelona if you look at it from that perspective then?
Well, from a branding perspective, I feel there's definitely going to be some level of risk. I mean, if you look at teams like Inter Milan and AC Milan, during these 7 years that they have been basically down in the gutter, they have a lot of the market of football, especially in places like Asia and the Americas, where the football market is rising. They're no longer able to attract those new fans and no longer able to expand their revenue stream to the same degree as they used to. Now, a club like Barcelona, with its massive stature, yes, they will have a bit more of a cushion. However, they will be losing some of that brand value, which has basically allowed them to become the richest club in the world.
I think what would be a good stage is to look at an example of how a club sort of fell and rise. Because Liverpool, although there was no factors other than they would just seem to dip for like a few years.
They just
There was
became
no
mad.
outside. There was no outside factor affecting them, but they did fall. They were finishing 7th, 8th. They did finish below Everton for one season, I believe. But they had managers like Roy Hodgson, Kevin Keegan, and then they had players who weren't really at the top level. But all of a sudden, 7 or 8 years later, they found themselves in 2 consecutive Champions Leagues. And in my opinion, the only thing that's brought them, one of the biggest reasons that's brought them there is one the system that they played under Klopp. So he's obviously played a huge part in revolutionizing the system, but also the players that they brought in the efficient way that they've spent their money. So if you look at players like Salah, Mane,
Right.
they have been expensive players. They've been top quality players, but who haven't really broken the bank.
But they weren't top quality when they were signed, though. Like Mo Salah wasn't Mo Salah. Sadio Mane wasn't Sadio Mane, if you know what I mean. Mo Salah was considered, why have they signed him? He's a Chelsea flop. And Sadio Mane was considered, why have they signed
Decent.
that dude from Southampton who hasn't really done much as of yet, I think it's different levels to it. And I don't think it's going to be that simple for Barcelona to bounce back, because they're always going to be looking for that. Similar to Real Madrid, if you take them Real Madrid stance, Real Madrid always up for that Galacticos signing. Barcelona are always looking for that Ousmane Dembele. They're always looking for that Neymar. They're always looking for that Antoine Griezmann. They're always looking for that.
But that's put them in the place they are now, because they've spent huge, and it hasn't paid off. And do you think that they need to? So how do you think they need to restructure this? Is it through like the manager?
So, see, the way Liverpool rose back up was by approaching football using data analytics. Now, Liverpool's owners, FSG, they come from the world of baseball, which was revolutionized by Moneyball, right? So when FSG took over Liverpool, they said, okay, first of all, we're going to restructure the business, make sure it's more modern and ready to compete against the likes of Man United. And then we're going to adopt a recruitment policy based around data analytics, and they hired a technical director who could work with that. And more importantly, the reason it failed under Brendan Rodgers was because he wasn't willing to work with that. But with Klopp, who's someone who's very proactive about adopting new technologies and new techniques, it worked perfectly. Klopp basically said, look, this is the style I want to play. I want to play very, very direct. Find me players who can play very direct. So the Liverpool technical directors and the recruitment team goes, okay, pull up the analytics, find the players who are high in a particular statistics, which measures directness. And how they measure directness is, say if a player touches the ball, right, how many more touches before that ball ends up in the back of the net, right? So that's how they're figuring out, how direct a player is. So basically, Klopp said, here's my style, here's my ideal player for each position. Find me players who will match that. And they go into a statistical model, they figure out hidden gems, who the hidden gems are, and sometimes if they need to splash out, they splash out. 75 million on Van Dijk, 60 something million on Allison. If they need to if those are the players, the best players who fit their statistical model, then they'll go ahead and splash out. But otherwise, they're going to be able to find guys like Mo Salah, guys like Sadio Mane and Roberto Firmino.
And Andy Robertson. Let's not forget 8 million for Andy Robertson.
Andy Robertson is a gem, mate. He's the greatest left back to ever played.
When I see us splash the money we did on Luke Shaw at the age Luke Shaw was, it makes me cry, man.
So with Barcelona and them, coming up, obviously Barcelona has a tradition of La Masia, and La Masia can still produce gems, and we can see that with players like Dani Olmo and Grimaldo, and currently with Ansu Fati, right? However, how many times have we seen, and especially right now, Barcelona academy prospects leave for other clubs, right? Dani Olmo is one of the bigger examples, but also Xavi Simons, who left for PSG.
Yeah, I think that's also caused by the sort of space they've had in their main team, because as we mentioned before, they've had a lot of players lurking around for a while now.
So should Barcelona adopt an Ajax model when it comes to player development?
I'm not sure that's part of their identity, and ultimately, their fans are accustomed to a certain way, and I mean, the fans are obviously going to have to change that now. But that, when you think of when you say Ajax policy, I think of let's get this kid really good and then flip him. Now, obviously, Barcelona aren't going to be looking at flipping him; they're going to be taking on. But if you don't kind of pander a little bit to what the fans' expectations are, because they're the main stakeholder ultimately at any club. That's one of the main cash cows. If you don't pander to their wants, or I'm reluctant to say needs, right? So if you don't pander to what they want or what they're accustomed to or what they support you for, then is that a stable business model to go ahead and take forward? I can't see Barcelona not splashing a little bit of money out for whatever position they need, like we've seen with Griezmann, like we've seen with Ousmane Dembele. I think that model that we'll probably see is maybe adopt a similar tactic to Liverpool with the data analysis and scout better essentially, and bring in players that fit better into what they're trying to build, rather than that's an expensive guy who's all right now, let's go get him.
Yeah, they just have to pick their spots better. Like, Ajax doesn't have the financial clout to ever just be like, all right, we're doubling down on this generation. But like Barca does. Like, Barca needs to pick their spots better in terms of when they double down on the internal prospects, when they decide that there's yet another extra transfer they have to make to turn the corner. Whereas Ajax doesn't have that like luxury. So I don't think that Barca should ever be in a spot where they need to like flip players the same way Ajax does, and they need to be a little bit more aggressive in terms of, well, less aggressive than they are now, but more aggressive than Ajax at like deciding when is it time to, put the pedal to the metal and really just amp up for a big run in whatever competitions they're in. Like, Ajax can't do that. They're just like stuck in the same like gear that they're always in. But Barca, even post bankruptcy, Barca should have the financial clout to be able to like really make sure that they have the like pieces in place to like make the run they need to make domestically and make the run they need to make in Europe to like stay, like pleasing the sponsors or whatever.
And it's not just when I say the Ajax, I don't just mean as in like sell them young, right, or sell them as soon as they're good enough, but instead I was looking at the fact that with the way Ajax Academy works is they usually keep their squads with only like 18 players, right, until you get to the first team. And then even in the first team, they're continuously looking at their younger prospects and saying, hey, would you like to play, right? They're always looking to start their younger guys, always looking for an opportunity. So rather than selling the players, looking for opportunities to give them playing time, and if, say, a player is not quite ready for the first team, but is good, but needs that playing time, utilizing the loan system, which is something Barcelona has only recently started using. And really, the loan system can be extremely beneficial. You can go out there, you can send these players out on loan, give them playing time, and if, say, they're not good enough, right, they're really not good enough, what's going to happen is, by going out on loan and having that playing time, they're going to have a little bit more value than, say, if they just sat on the bench for 3-4 years.
Do you think Barcelona can realistically afford to do that, though? Do you think they can realistically afford right now when, they're not winning Champions Leagues, they're not where they should be, they're not winning La Liga? Do you think they can realistically afford to then take that risk and say, all right, all you young lads, go out there, show us what you can do? I personally don't think they can. I think the reason why they're in this situation right now is because Xavi, Iniesta, that golden era that we saw, between 2008 and 2012, essentially when Spain dominated world football. And when I say Spain dominated world football, I mean Barcelona dominated world football. That Euro winning team, that World Cup winning team, and that second Euro winning team was basically Barcelona with the odd Real Madrid player in, right? That era came and went. This current state of Barcelona, to me, is them trying to grasp that back, trying to take that we were this, we should be this, we're still this, when the cycles come and go and they can't let go of that cycle. When you're trying to grasp that desperately to it, can you realistically take that risk and play these younger players, whether they should or shouldn't? If you're sat from their perspective as we've got shareholders to please, we've got all these stakeholders to please, because let's be fair, the Barcelona hierarchy aren't thinking of this as a football club where we're going to get great football and we're going to produce the best talent. They're thinking we need to win, and we need to win now, or everything goes to crap. And that to me is why they've been on this slow downward spiral. And what we're seeing now was just sheer desperation. Can you afford to start turning to your academy and basically telling them to fix the problem when time is running out and you might not necessarily have time for these guys to develop before it's too late. And I think this argument that I'm saying now is a bit late. That's, for me, is what their way of thinking is. Would you say 2 years ago, 3 years ago, before it was as bad as it is now, would that have been a feasible thing to do from sort of a hierarchical perspective?
Certainly more playing time than they did give them. But I mean, that the answer here is the sponsors, right? Like, how much are the sponsors willing to put up with? Like, if the sponsors dry up or reduce their commitments because, like, they're not winning enough or they're not playing enough big names or whatever, then that is the answer to your question. Like, they're just beholden to the sponsors and the shareholders in terms of how much time do they have to really be giving to the next generation to continue to develop. And like, that's my original question for in the hand, and like, I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. It's just whether or not, is this the moment? Do they have the ability, because of this bankruptcy where expectations will be lowered regardless, to give that playing time to some of these players and to cut loose some of the players that are past it, or are at least past their value relative to their wage, which is true of a bunch of people. So like, I mean, I think that maybe we could kind of close out this conversation with like, is this the moment? Can they like retain sponsors while also finding ways to cut costs from the playing squad and give more time to the few bright prospects they have? Like, is this the moment?
Yeah, I mean, we can. I don't think now they'd be able to get away with it, but we can sort of say. So what's our measure for Barcelona coming back to success? If we were to say in the next 5 years, will they win a Champions League? As a sort of final question.
Yeah, so real quick before we answer that question, I just want to throw this in there. Barcelona runs on the socios model, right? So there's club members, right, the fans, and they are really the owners of the club in a sense, right? They elect the board, they elect the president. It's completely different from the English system, right? It's really a community oriented or fan oriented system. So with Barcelona fans, to all the people who I know who support Barcelona's, they seem to be more patient with their youth prospects than, say, other clubs might be. They seem to really relish the fact that a young player is getting the chance to prove himself in the first team. And they're willing to give them a lot more space than they would give to, say, someone like Antoine Griezmann. Like, if Ansu Fati was to go to shit suddenly, I promise you that he's still going to get at least 20 more games or 30 more games than, say, someone like Griezmann would or someone like Coutinho would.
But that's easy to say when you've had so many good players come up from the academy. And when the ones that haven't worked out, say players like Tello, De La Feu, who have been sort of masked by the success of players who have done well in their system, like the Messis, the Iniestas, it's very easy to say, oh, I can back the players that don't work out, when you're so used to having players that have worked out, if that makes sense.
See, what I'm talking about is I'm talking about their culture as a club, right? Culture as a fan group. And these are fans who have a lot more say in their club than, say, a place like fans of Liverpool, right?
Mm-hmm.
These fans decide the future of the club. In fact, the election for the next president is coming up soon. Because of that culture, because this fan-oriented culture, because the fans are really the owners of the club in a sense, they have this patience for their younger players. They have this patience for their own youth players, which they lack for players which come from the outside. And we've seen that with the reception guys like Philippe Coutinho, guys like Ousmane Dembele, and Antoine Griezmann has received.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So if I ask you how you would measure, so what would you be how would you define them coming back?
The most important thing for Barcelona to really mark their comeback is to win La Liga. Okay. Continuously dominate La Liga like they did in the 2010s. They won 7 La Liga titles, I think. Right? And then eventually in, say, 5 years' time, try to win a Champions League.
So, as a final thoughts to everyone here, do you think we're going to see Barcelona win a Champions League over the next, how many years was it you said again, sorry?
So I
6,
said
7 years.
5 years. Well, if not win the Champions League, at least challenge for the title for the Champions League.
I don't believe so. I think it's going to be a bit more of a complex rebuild process. And I think the important thing to remember with the rebuild process, like Barcelona are looking at, is you've got quality oozing out of other countries. Milan seem to be potentially back where they are. Bayern Munich seem to be on an absolute another level right now. Liverpool are on another level right now. Manchester City, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw them win a Champions League in the next 5 years. As much as we like to joke that, haha, you're not going to win one. I think it wouldn't be completely out of the realms of impossibility. They've definitely got more of a chance than Barcelona. You know, Paris Saint-Germain are going to keep going until they get one. I believe there's too much quality right now, and I think it's funny that we're not. I don't know if you guys will, but I'm certainly not mentioning Real Madrid into that conversation either, which I think is quite funny from the sort of dominance we saw from Spain in the 10s and late noughties even. But yeah, I think there's too much quality around there now for them to look in such a short time frame. I think it's going to be quite a rebuild process, and then some before they're looking at that sort of level again.
You know, I agree with Ali on a lot all the points pretty much. I would say the only thing which I feel that Barcelona can do is try to adopt a more modern approach, try to experiment more, give their youth players a chance to play, give their youth players a chance to prove themselves, and if they don't want to give them a chance in Barcelona's first team, send them out on loan and not be afraid to use a loan system. As for winning the Champions League, you know, I said that they should try to challenge for it within the next 5 years if they really want to establish themselves or keep their reputation as one of the biggest clubs around. But as for winning the Champions League, honestly, I don't see it happening for another 7 years or another 9 or 10 years, because the Champions League is extremely difficult to win because the biggest clubs in the world are competing for it. The best players in the world are competing for it. And simply speaking, Barcelona will no longer have the best players in the world in the next few years.
They're not going to win it in the next 5 years. I mean, I think that we all agree on that. The better question is, like, well, how do you measure Champions League success, which is kind of both what Rish and Ali were both talking about as well, which I agree. Like, if you think about the Champions League in the 2010s and who could win the Champions League then, the list was like half as long as it is now. Like, the list of teams and the tier of teams, like, and the distance between the tier of teams that Ali talked about, which is a list that I pretty much agree with, and then teams like Dortmund or like Arsenal or Manchester United, the teams that are, or Tottenham or Chelsea, the teams that are like behind City and Liverpool in terms of Champions League ambitions, maybe not in terms of league, but in terms of at least Champions League ambitions, the gap is widening too, like at the top. And so, like, I feel like for Barca to really contend against the elite teams, that group is much bigger than it used to be, and there's other teams like on knocking on the door of that too. So there's just too many teams that want it and too many teams that need it financially. Like, I could see Barcelona in a quarterfinal or a semifinal in the next 5 years, but in terms of like winning, it's just so silly to think about, like, is that an attainable goal for any club? And I don't know that it is.
Right now, I'm looking at the teams that are out there, and I'd even go as far as to say that I could, if you're talking next 10 years, I would put money on a team like Tottenham winning it before Barcelona in the current state, which I think, you know, you say something like that like 3 or 4 years ago and you're getting laughed at, but right now I don't know if many people would actually disagree with that sort of take.
I mean,
and that's an embarrassing place for Barcelona to be, an absolutely embarrassing place for Barcelona to be.
Bottle
that's
FC.
the reality. Yeah, exactly. Bottle FC have got more of a chance of winning a Champions League right now in my eyes than Barcelona, which kind of says a lot.
I mean, right now they don't have the worst squad. I think they've already qualified for the round of 16.
Yeah, but they should. This is a similar thing to Manchester United, the Manchester United argument, where, you know, people look at Manchester United beating Leipzig by however many, or beating Istanbul 4-1, and they're like, "Wait, Ollie's back." He's not back. We should be thrashing Istanbul 4-1. Barcelona should be getting down to the last 16 with the players on paper that they've got. They should 100% at least be semi-final, final candidates, but they're not, because there's something rotten going on, and that's the reality of the situation. Like, you can use that argument for a lot of teams, but it doesn't reflect reality, and that's what the problem is.
with the resources that they have, they should be challenging for the Champions League title every single year. They
Yeah.
should be challenging for the treble every single year, really.
100%. You look at the players in there, the players that they've let go. You know, they've let Luis Suarez go, and if you're looking at a club that's able to just tell Suarez goodbye, like, you know, you look at a team that's capable of doing that, we shouldn't be thinking what an embarrassment. You should be thinking what kind of quality must they have to tell a player like Luis Suarez, one of their best goal scorers of the past, you know, since he basically
Their third
joined
highest
there.
goal scorer.
Exactly. If they're able to tell someone like him goodbye, then we should not be thinking what are they doing. You should be thinking that's actually incredible that they're able to, you know, just say bye-bye to such an incredible asset. But that's not the reality of the situation, and that's where the problem lies right now.
Exactly, it's the wages and stuff which they just can't afford to pay anymore. And also, I mean, who have they replaced Suarez with? Braithwaite, right?
Number 9, Big Martin, Middlesbrough to Barcelona. But that's
Right,
again,
so
again,
talking about-
again, nah, just as a quick last note on the topic of Braithwaite. Really, you don't have a striker, so rather than looking at your youth academy, you're gonna go there. Are you, like, it's just stuff like that I can't grasp my head around, man, and I think that encompasses the problem.
As a last point, they did say an injured Vermaelen, or a very injury-prone Vermaelen, who spent a lot of time in the medical room at Arsenal, and they signed him for 18 million.
It's crazy.
Mate, they signed Alex Song. You remember that?
Oh,
We should have seen this
mate.
coming a long time ago.
It's almost as bad as Madrid going for Jonathan Woodgate, but yeah. Let's move on.
All right. Well, talking about big clubs, which seem to be in a difficult position right now, let's move on to Juventus and Pirlo's Juventus. I did some digging around, and I found Pirlo's thesis for his UEFA Pro license. And the thesis is titled "How I Want to Play Football." Very fancy title, Pirlo, as always.
Straight to the point.
Yep. So here's some key pointers I want to point out. Pirlo's inspirations: Johan Cruyff's Barcelona, Pep Guardiola's Barcelona, Louis van Gaal's Ajax, Carlo Ancelotti's Milan, Antonio Conte's Juventus. One team which really sticks out to me there is Louis van Gaal's Ajax, because now some people may not remember this, but Louis van Gaal's Ajax was one of the greatest teams of all time. They went invincible across all competitions, winning almost everything except for the domestic cup, where they lost one game. Now, what does this mean? What do these influences result in the way that Pirlo wants to play his football? 3 things. The first is total football. Total football is that all 11 players are attacking, all 11 players are defending. And when it comes to depth, which is the last of his attacking principles, he always wants one man to make the run in behind to create options or create space between the lines. A 2-man front line where one player drops while the other attacks the space suits this very well. And we see that with Juventus right now, where they're utilizing a 2-man front line. Now, this is where the 2-man front line of Juventus kind of become a bit problematic. So when it comes to defending, Pirlo's first principle is he doesn't want to concede. He wants to win back quickly. And winning ball higher up the pitch is crucial to him, because that helps him, A, get into dangerous positions, and B, in his own words, limit the courage and self-esteem of his opponents. The man who loses the ball initiates a press, but he may not tackle. Instead, he will look to cut inside passing lanes, so then the opposition is forced to pass the ball out wide, and as soon as the ball is passed out wide, that's a trigger for Pirlo's team to begin a man-oriented press to slowly force the opposition to be forced into making a long ball, right? Send a long ball through, which then the keeper can come and pick up. This is the big problem with this whole system, and this is what we're seeing at Juventus. There is a man in Pirlo's front line named Cristiano Ronaldo, one of the best players of all time, who is currently riding off into the sunset. He does not have the legs to press the way Pirlo wants. So what happens to this defensive philosophy which Pirlo has? Well, Juventus is forced to basically tuck in and give up that higher ground. And rather than pressing high up the pitch, they're playing very compactly in front of their own goal, which would be fine because Juventus have some amazing defenders. They're very tactically gifted. However, remember Pirlo only wants one player wide at all times. So therefore, in this situation, defensively, they're extremely vulnerable out wide because there will only be one player out there defending. And there is a fullback named Juan Cuadrado who is a great player going forward. But let's be honest, and we saw this when he was at Chelsea, and we are seeing this now at Juventus. He's not defensively very solid, and teams have realized that, and they're exposing him over and over again. The other problem with this is that currently Juventus' black line has Chiellini and Bonucci, who are both pretty old, and they're starting. They're very crucial to Juventus, especially Chiellini. In fact, Chiellini is, I think, one of their top 3 passers into the final third, which just goes to show his importance. But he's old. He's losing a lot of that pace, a lot of that quickness, and teams are exploiting that. Teams are exploiting the slowness of that Juventus' backline and exploiting the weakness of Cuadrado out wide defending. Now, this problem could be solved if Juventus had a younger backline, and someone like De Ligt is going to help out with that. But also, really, this problem should not even exist in the first place because Juventus should have, under Pirlo, because of what Pirlo's philosophy is, should have 2 energetic strikers who can initiate the press and be the first defenders. But you cannot put Cristiano Ronaldo on the bench. He wins games on his own at times, which is the Ronaldo dilemma now, right? And this has been really why Juventus is struggling currently. They have 4 wins and I think four losses.
Nah, it's four wins, 4 draws so far.
4 draws.
They're still undefeated in the league.
Yeah, but it's gonna take time for these ideas to really meld in with the squad, which is fine because this squad was Sarri's squad before, and they played a possession-heavy style, so it's a natural transition. But because they have so many aging core components, it's gonna be difficult to play a high-pressing style.
I think it's difficult. I think generally as a whole, we're talking about Pirlo's philosophies. I think it's difficult to assess that just 8 games into a season, particularly when, you look at who he's got. You're naming the Ronaldos, the Cuadrados, the Chiellinis, the Bonuccis, who are probably not intertwined with his vision. And when you're looking at it from that perspective, I think you have to sort of accept that, okay, until we have the correct components and the correct tools, it's going to be a bit of a process to rebuild. Now, I think they can hide behind the fact, to a degree, that, AC Milan are back sort of thing. I know Sassuolo's second, Roma are third. There seems to be more of a rise in the other teams, and I think that might give them a little bit of leverage to help with development, because you can use that as an excuse as well. These teams are really good this season. This is why we've not won the league for, the 30th time on the bounce, or whatever it is now for Juventus. I think it's difficult to assess Pirlo based on the teams that he's currently, the team that he's inherited. Obviously doesn't line up with his vision or his sort of philosophies of that you've listed off before. When it comes to Cristiano Ronaldo, because I think that's a big point of it, right? Cristiano Ronaldo doesn't fit into this system. The fact of the matter is, Cristiano Ronaldo has won multiple titles for Juventus. He went there at an age where I struggle to name another player who has been able to completely adapt their game the way Ronaldo has an age and still be able to compete and be successful at that top level. So if this is a way of phasing Cristiano Ronaldo out, I don't think his Italian legacy is affected, because ultimately he's gone there and won titles. Now, Juventus are going to win titles anyway, but Cristiano still won them. I guess you could maybe put a question mark on, but what does that mean for the Champions League? Because I don't think Juventus are going to win the Champions League the way they're playing right now. No way with 4 draws in Serie A are they going to be competing on that level. For me, Cristiano Ronaldo has done what he went out to do. He didn't need to win any more Champions League trophies. He won 3 on the bounce. It's just part of the redevelopment process. It's the part of the rebuild, and I think that's why he left Real Madrid, because I think they were looking for the rebuild as well. They got it wrong, obviously. They've not been exactly great right now, but yeah, I think it's just part and parcel of the game. I don't think it will impact too heavily on Ronaldo's legacy in Italy or in world football, because at the end of the day, he should be retired by all extents and purposes for someone who played his game. You see the Ronaldo at Manchester United. That Ronaldo does not play in a top division until after the age of 32 or 33, because he can't run anymore and he can't do X and he can't do Y and he can't do Z, but he's still there. I don't think it's that detrimental for Ronaldo, but I think it is just a question of, is Pirlo going to be warranted the time to bring in his own men and to transition it out? Because phasing all those players out, the two defenders particularly, who have been there for what, years? But I know Bonucci had his little, I guess we could call it a loan move to AC Milan, but particularly Chiellini.
Vacation?
Yeah, a little holiday, just a little trip to Milan for a couple of years, just 1 year actually, wasn't it? But yeah, it's going to be difficult to phase Chiellini out. I guess some of the other elements that they need, like the right back, you can't do all of that at once. It's just a question of will he be warranted the time, which I'm not too sure, to be honest.
And here's the thing, right? Do you want to be the person who tells Ronaldo, hey man, I want you to sit on the bench? Especially when Ronaldo can still win games on his own. Against Roma, the only reason Juventus got 1 point out of that game was because Ronaldo scored 2 goals.
Yeah.
Well, it's a trade-off, so he has to make a decision on whether he thinks Ronaldo can sort of help them get more points with him playing, as opposed to him not being there, having the system that he wants. And it's a sort of payoff between two decisions that he has.
Right. And I mean, right now, the way Juventus are playing, clearly they have adopted their style to Ronaldo. This is not a team which is Pirlo's ideal team. This is a team which has been adopted so that Ronaldo doesn't have to press, right? They're sitting on the counter, absorbing pressure, and then looking to quickly start the, I guess, fast break.
I know what you mean. I guess the alternative is to maybe have Ronaldo come back deeper and play between the lines a little bit more, similar to how I guess even Figo towards the end of his career came a bit more centrally. Even someone like Ryan Giggs, when he was at Ronaldo's age, came a bit more centrally. He was in central midfield a lot, and I think Ronaldo probably has the range to play that role in terms of passing and stuff. But ultimately, if, for example, let's say Pep Guardiola went to Juventus and not Pirlo, Pep Guardiola could turn around to Ronaldo and say, I don't need you anymore, and put him on the bench because he's Pep Guardiola. Pirlo has not proved himself at management, so he can't really make those calls. And if he does make that call and it goes horribly wrong, that's him pretty much. That's his managerial career stunted at least. So I guess you're gonna have to integrate both, or try and find some form of mid ground. Ronaldo to potentially leave the club with a much nicer sort of, I guess, send off to it rather than you're out, mate. You know what I mean?
But yeah, I think all rebuilds, they take time and they take bold decisions. Because if you look at Pep when he came in his first season, they finished 4th, and at the start of the season he dropped. He sold Joe Hart, and that was a big deal because Joe Hart was their main keeper for so many years. He was part of the club's identity. He was part of the club when they sort of made that jump from a club that's lurking around to a Champions League side.
Joe Hart isn't Ronaldo though. Like they're not the same.
No, but but the point is that you gotta sort of back. If you're gonna go for a rebuild, you have to back the sort of manager because it's gonna take time. No matter if it's Pep or Klopp or Pirlo, it's gonna take time and it's gonna take some big decisions, and you can't be half in and half out.
True, but there's a difference between dropping Joe Hart, and dropping Cristiano Ronaldo. Like I don't think you can put that in the same category. I know the point you're trying to make. But
it's not. It's obviously I'm not comparing the two players.
Cristiano Ronaldo.
No, absolutely. But my point is, when Pep came in, he made a lot of changes, and at the end of his first season, he replaced a lot of players, the fullbacks.
That's true. That's
for
true.
Example.
But that being said, it's quite clear, and I think it has been clear for a while. Pep doesn't really see Sergio Aguero as part of his idea. He brought in Gabriel Jesus to try and phase him out, and even dropped Aguero for a bit during his early days. But Sergio Aguero is Sergio Aguero. The quality's there. Gabriel Jesus, the quality wasn't there. So Aguero finds his way in, and Pep adapts to him. if you're gonna do that for Sergio Aguero, I think you have to do that for Cristiano Ronaldo if he's at the club,
Well,
because
Plus, imagine the
Go ahead.
presence in the dressing room. I remember during my own playing times, right? There were certain players who were just so driven, had the quality to win games on their own. But it's not just that quality, but they had this drive, this infectious drive. And the thing about Ronaldo is that he's very good at transporting that infectious drive to other people. Like Messi has that drive too, but he's not exactly, the most extroverted guy. But Ronaldo he's very good with other people, and he knows how to just infect them with his hunger to win. And when you take someone like that out of the dressing room, you're taking out really someone who's a heartbeat of the club, someone who's a heartbeat and someone who's a winning machine. And that can have a massive impact on the dressing room.
Well, how long do you see Ronaldo at Juventus? How many more years do you see? Because he's still performing at that top level, but he is aging, and that presence is going to have to be replaced at some stage.
I can't see him lasting more than the end of next season with his age, the identity Pirlo is clearly trying to go with. I can't see Ronaldo staying there beyond that. I think a move to either Paris or the MLS, or even, he doesn't need to do either anymore. I don't think he's going to be there beyond that sort of time period, but it's just a case of, from Pirlo's perspective, you're looking at, when we're talking about Juventus rebuild, we're not talking about Manchester United being 7th under Moyes and Louis van Gaal coming in, or Jose Mourinho coming in. We're talking about the team that won the league last season. We're talking about a team that's won the league for many seasons. We're talking about a team that hasn't dropped off the way Liverpool had, the way Manchester United have, the way Arsenal have, the way Chelsea did temporarily. No, but the thing is, you're not going to get warranted the time to rebuild like maybe Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's had, the way Frank Lampard will, the way Arteta will, the way Klopp did. You remember Liverpool when Klopp first went there were not exactly great because he was trying to embed the philosophy. They tried to walk the ball in every time, and it it riled a few Liverpool fans up. I don't know if Rich remembers that sort of era, but it was like, okay, but he was just setting the seeds, and he was warranted the time. Pirlo, coming from a club that has had the success that they have had in the very, very recent past, he won't be warranted the same time as that. So what do you do if you're Pirlo? You're sat 4th place right now. Whether you've not lost a game, sorry, it's irrelevant. You're not going to be warranted that sort of time. Can you afford to, have sort of players like, even if it is Ronaldo hanging around? I guess is the question.
So, okay, I'll kind of add to that and add another question on there. So Pirlo was a club legend. Okay. He's not just a club legend, he's an Italian legend. And generally speaking, we have seen across the board that legends seem to get a slightly more time. But if Juventus fail to win the league, which is a minimum expectation over there, does Pirlo get the boot?
Kenny Dalglish is a Liverpool legend. He got the boot. I think
there's
any different. I don't think. I think the game's a bit more cutthroat than what you're giving it credit for, especially a club that has had the dominance Juve have had.
I think for a player like Pirlo, the rebuild for a club like Juventus is going to be much easier than for a club like Liverpool.
We're not talking about a club that was 8th. We're talking about a club that won last season. There's some form of rebuild going on, but it's not like we're talking about dragging a club back up and rebuilding.
No, absolutely.
On that
level. I don't think a season where he finishes 2nd or 3rd, where he fails to win the league, is going to be that bad. And also the rebuild. The point I'm making is, it's going to be much easier for Juventus to win the league than it is to pick a club like Man United.
We're talking about a team.
Come back.
We're talking about a team that sacked the manager that won the league last season. Are you sure they're not that cutthroat? They sacked Sarri. Sarri won the league.
But this is, as you mentioned, a rebuild. It's a sort of change in philosophy.
It's a change in philosophy, but how much are they willing to cut? How much of a cost are they willing to pay? We're talking about a club that sacked a manager that won the league, mate. I don't think it's going to be beyond them to let Pirlo go should the results not come.
Let's look at... Sarri had a much worse reputation.
With the reputation or not, he still won the league.
I mean,
Now,
Pirlo has no reputation at all.
not as a manager, as a player and as
Yeah.
an icon, he has the reputation. Again, I don't see how he will be warranted the time if they finish second, perhaps. But if they finish any lower than that, third, fourth, don't have a particularly good Champions League or a cup run, I can't see him staying on.
And it's not just that, but here's the thing: Pirlo might have a certain playing philosophy, and might be, it might be a change for Juventus. Probably not. It's more of a evolution from Sarri's playing philosophy to Pirlo's playing philosophy for Juventus. However, we have to remember that Juventus is dominated not by their playing philosophy, but by their club philosophy. And Juventus's club philosophy is, are we winning? That's it.
If we're not, we're gonna pay some people off to make sure we do.
The only thing they care about is, are we winning?
I mean, if you look at Allegri, he went a lot of years. Well, in fact, he didn't win the Champions League, but he did win the league, and he did get done.
Yeah, but
And I
so
know
did Sarri.
he was-
different.
So did
He was
Sarri.
winning the, but Sarri. The thing about Sarri was, there was problems in the dressing room to some extent. Obviously they're very professional, so it wasn't like what happened with, say, Balotelli fighting whoever he fought in men's.
Mancini, yeah.
But there were certain, yes, there were certain problems going on in the dressing room. But also you have to remember that Sarri, he lost in the cup final, which is a big blow to Juventus, because Juventus is a team which does not just pride itself on winning the league every year. They pride themselves on pretty much winning the double almost every year. And even the only reason Allegri wasn't getting the boot when he was losing cup finals was because he had won doubles before, and he won doubles later on. But even then, in his final year of contract, and people forget this, but Allegri still had 1 year remaining on his contract when Juventus said, "Okay, mate, goodbye. We're bringing in this dude from Chelsea."
Yeah, so there's a lot of parallels within the Chelsea example. So Lampard replaces Sarri, and Lampard doesn't have a better season than Sarri, but he's still here right now.
Yeah, but
And Sarri won the Europa League and got top.
Chelsea had a transfer ban. Chelsea weren't winning the league. They weren't dominant. They're not on the level Juventus was. Chelsea's a poor example to use because of
is
the
it though?
connotations.
I feel that both Chelsea and Juventus have that similar philosophy of winning over everything else.
Chelsea don't anymore. They did in 2004 and 2005 and maybe up until 2000 and whenever Jose won the league with them. I think it was either 13-14. But they haven't had a while. I think a lot of, particularly, I don't know, Chelsea fans that I know have resided in the fact that we're a top 4 team now. We're not going to be competing for the top 2. I mean, I think that was clear with bringing in Lampard. I don't think you can compare Chelsea to Juve with that regard. They haven't had that dominance. Chelsea, it's been how many years since Chelsea won a league title? It's going to be how many more? I don't think Chelsea expect to win a league title anytime soon.
As we mentioned before, like, the success is cyclical, right? So you have ups and downs, and the sort of consecutive leagues that Juve have had has been there for a while now. But eventually that's going to drop off when you have the competition that they do. When you bring in a legend like Pirlo, who's changing the philosophy, it's an aging squad. I don't think it's going to be as cutthroat as maybe it was before.
Okay, that's an interesting point for me because you look at AC Milan, were former AC Milan legends who took charge of the club warranted that? If we're looking at it from that perspective, so we'll look at the league. We're talking about that. I mean, who was it? Was it? I'm pretty sure Gattuso was kicked. I think Clarence Seedorf was kicked. Inzaghi was kicked as well, wasn't he? Or is he still
Inzaghi is Lazio, right? Inzaghi is at Lazio right now and doing really well. But I think he was also in Milan before, right?
Yeah. They got kicked. It stinks of that to me. I don't think he's going to be warranted the time because Milan were in more of a rebuild than Juve are and probably will be or should be. I firmly believe that if Maurizio Sarri was still at the club, they'd be top right now.
He was very underrated manager.
Yeah,
he got a lot of harsh
he got a lot of shit thrown his way,
even in England.
Unwarranted. Yeah, in England, I think he was treated very, very unfairly. I think the whole thing was, sorry ball, and then I think when that maybe needed to be tweaked, I think he got caught a lot of shit. But yeah, I don't think Juventus are fourth under Sarri.
I feel that Sarri was so overhyped that whenever he made even the tiniest bit of underperformance, it was suddenly the end of the world.
Yeah, exactly. That
Yeah.
was the problem with Sarri. Yeah, I don't think Pirlo's going to be warranted the time. I can't see Juventus being satisfied with anything other than top, because you can say whatever you want. Go back to that Chelsea argument again, where Lampard's been warranted time. Chelsea aren't expected to win the Premier League like Juventus are expected to win Serie A, regardless of
Aren't they
what AC
spending?
Milan are doing.
Isn't Chelsea spending like they're trying to
They've
win the league?
spent 200 odd million, but that is you could make the case that that's the Hazard money and that's the transfer budget from the season before that they didn't spend.
But still,
But-
200 million
but
during
it's still
COVID.
200 million.
But you've seen the players that they bought in; they're quite young talents. I mean, with the exception, I guess, of Thiago Silva, who was a free. They've gone.
mean,
for
Timo
sort
Werner.
of young. I mean, he's still not hit his. He's still not a prime striker. He's not the sort of we want to win the league right now. Which striker do we bring in? Timo Werner doesn't spring to mind.
He was linked with Liverpool. He was linked with Bayern. I think
Linked and gone are two different things.
absolutely, but before he went to Chelsea,
Nico
he
Gaitan
was
was
spoken
linked to
about
United.
in that regard, in the same
The
regard as
only reason-
Lewandowski.
Yeah, the only reason Liverpool and Bayern did not go ahead and buy him was because the money involved was just too much during a pandemic. But
Yeah,
Chelsea,
but-
this is the ambition of Chelsea. During a pandemic, they go out and they said 200 million, done.
Interest generates that value, and that's why the fee became as high as it did. I think.
Yeah, but that's the same.
if
for
you want to
every
if you
club.
want to win a league and you want a striker, I don't think you go out and buy Timo Werner. I think Werner's more of a we have a project, we have an idea. It's going to take a couple of seasons. This guy will probably fit the bill to what we're working for. If
But
you
he's the best German striker around right now. He's one of the best strikers in the top 10 for sure right now. He's elite. Or if not elite, then very close to it.
From what we've seen from him at Chelsea, anyway. I mean, he's already been pushed out to the left wing, and they're already starting to phase Tammy Abraham.
So that's
back
him
in.
under Lampard. But before Lampard, he had, I think, one of the highest XGs.
He was
in the
out
top
there
5
fighting against
European.
Lewandowski.
Yeah,
Whilst that may be true,
so
what
you
we're
could
seeing
say
now
that
is a completely
Lampard was
different-
responsible.
You could say Lampard's responsible. I mean, that's a fair point. But again, Chelsea is much more of a rebuild than Juventus is right now.
You know what? Talking about Lampard being responsible, and also talking about Pirlo, who literally his first ever job as a coach is the Juventus first team. How do you feel about former players suddenly being thrust into big jobs without ever really proving much? Especially in the case of Pirlo, who has literally not even coached a youth team.
I think everybody saw Pep Guardiola and was like, "We'll have a bit of that."
But no, see, Pep had experience. He coached the Barcelona B team. He coached the youth
but,
setup.
I mean, Ole
He
Gunnar
came up.
Solskjaer coached the United under 23s and was very,
But
very,
he-
very, very successful whilst doing it. Like incredibly successful. He was getting plaudits left, right, and center for his job there. I don't know what the hype around it is. I think it's a bit to do with Pep and a bit to do with this will get the fans happy.
I think it stems mostly from the fact that club legends get more time. And hear me out on this, because I think a lot of the time when managers get sacked, it isn't because of the results themselves. It's about the noise around it. So if a manager loses 3-4 games, it creates a lot of negativity, which enters a negative feedback loop.
I
It
disagree.
enters into the dressing room, and sometimes it's better to just get rid of the manager. I'm not saying after
the thing about that is I don't think that was anywhere
4
near
games. I'm saying after like a few months.
I don't think there was anywhere near as much noise, for example, surrounding Pochettino as there was or still is around Ole Gunnar
That's one
Solskjaer.
sample.
Okay,
That- that's-
one
That's
thing
just
on that real
a
quick.
more recent one. You could say that about
Yeah.
Nigel Pearson as well.
I mean, here's one thing. One thing on Pochettino. Pochettino's been available for a while, right? And we can all agree that he's a top world-class manager. Yet Juventus, they look around, they see guys like Pochettino available, and they go, "Hey, Pirlo, you wanna? I know we just kind of gave you this job of coaching the U23s, and we know that you haven't really coached the U23s yet, or anyone for the fact. But do you want the Juventus first team job? And we know that you don't have your pro license yet because you're running late on writing up that thesis. But still, do you want that? Do you want that Juventus job? I mean,
Well,
it's a bit of a madness.
I mean, it pretty much is. But it goes back to the point I made before. Club legends get more time. And to go back to Pochettino's example, he did. You said there wasn't much noise about him getting sacked, but he did make a Champions League final the year before. He had a lot of success. He did build them up, and the criteria I think isn't always as simple as to say, all right, so who's got the best profile for this position? It's more external factors, because club legends do create less noise.
They do create less noise, but if you're looking from a perspective of we need to play well so we make more money, then it doesn't make any financial sense in that regard to bring in someone purely because of that.
I think the results in between some managers, it's marginal. For example, if you take Juve, I know Pirlo hasn't started very well, but they win the league with or without Pochettino, whether it's Pirlo or anyone else. Okay, so they haven't made the best start. Before the season started, that's a sort of conclusion. That'd be a fair assessment. I think we all would have agreed with that. Okay, it hasn't worked out best right now, but I think for a club like Juve to have a shot with a guy like Pirlo wasn't the worst decision in the world.
I think it's he's not losing games, which is important, but we're saying it as people who maybe don't understand the culture of the club. Juventus will not be happy with that 100%. Do you honestly believe that Cristiano Ronaldo is going to be sat there thinking, we're third, that's all right?
I mean, no, Ronaldo's going to be sat there thinking, am I going to be the first player in the past 9 years to actually lose a Serie A title? Exactly. Am I going to be that guy? Because people will label him that. I promise you, even though he's proven everything there is, if he does not win the Serie A title, the world labels him as a failure.
Well, I mean, I think you need to... So, for example, as you mentioned before, the success, it comes and it goes. It comes and it goes. And I think for Milan and the other competitors they have, they're sort of on the rise, and Juve are sort of falling a little bit. And you can't disagree that signings like Dillett, they haven't really created... Well, he hasn't really performed... Even if you include players like Ramsey, they haven't really performed...
Here's the thing. When you talk about the performance, right, you have to remember, it's all about context. We're looking at Juventus here. Juventus is one of the biggest clubs in the world. It has been, for over 10 years now, one of the top 3, if not top 2 best clubs around, really, if you look at it. So, yes, Dillett, we look at Dillett and we look at Ramsey and we think, oh, they're failing. But in reality, especially Ramsey, who I think has been quite decent for Juventus and has been crucial, really, under Pirlo. Yeah. But here's the thing. If those players go to, say, a club like Cagliari, or they go to a club like Dortmund, or they go to Valencia, suddenly, oh, wow, they're great players. Yeah. Oh, my God, look at how much potential this kid has, right? But when you come to Juventus, when you come to Real Madrid, Barcelona, Manchester United, you don't get time. You show up and you're expected to be world-class, especially if you arrive for the price tags that someone like Dillett arrived for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
So if we close this on one question, will Juventus win the league this season? And will Pirlo stay?
Ale, why don't you take that first?
I think they could. Pirlo is coming up with challenges he's never faced before, and it'll be interesting to see how he does them. I mean, they haven't lost. I guess you could say that's teething problems, but I really disagree with them being a club that's on the decline. They were not showing signs of being a club on decline for the past couple of years. The same way that Milan were, the same way that United were, etc., etc. I think they won the league last season, got rid of the manager who did it, brought another manager in. They're not doing what they should be. And if you look at a club like Juventus, first 8 games, how many seasons have we seen Juventus go the first 8 games of a season and have won every single one? Milan have won 6, drawn 2. I mean, you still expect Juventus to win their first 8 games regardless.
They shouldn't even be in 4th place. This is a club where the expectation is first.
Exactly.
And nothing
4th
else.
place is like out of this world. The only time they're finishing anything lower than... The only time they have finished like low is when they were sent down to the 2nd division for match fixing. Like this is a club that is not on the decline, not in the same way as Manchester United, Liverpool, not in the same need of a rebuild as a club like Chelsea.
And something like Yeah, and something like 70% of Italy supports them. They have insane resources.
You could say the same about Manchester United, really, in terms of the percentage of people who support. They're going to be high numbers that doesn't necessarily convert to results, but ultimately, Pirlo's inherited a team that won the league last season, and he isn't winning the league with them now. And from every single standpoint, that's not enough for a team like Juve. They're not Chelsea. They're not Chelsea. They are not rebuilding the way Chelsea have been. They're not at that level yet. Then low enough to be there yet. They're a team that should be winning, and they're not ultimately. And I don't think that's going to warrant time.
Sorry, so yes or no? Are they going to win the league this season?
No, I think Milan. Maybe even Sassuolo, to be honest, but nah. I think AC Milan will win it again.
Someone's playing
this year.
FM out there. Someone is playing FM in Italy.
Yeah, they're looking at that. I mean, I'm looking at the league table right now. I'm seeing Fiorentina and Udinese 15th, 16th. Torino are 18th.
It's
That's
like, what?
insane.
Didn't Atlanta beat Liverpool?
2-0. Yeah.
Yeah.
Field.
Mate,
Haha.
what is going on in Italy? What is going on in Italy?
Whatever they're feeding
So come on, Rish. So what's your thoughts? And are Juve going to win the league this season? And is Pirlo going to be at Juventus at the end of the season?
I really like Pirlo's ideas. However, we've seen this over and over again with that specific philosophy, is that it takes time to implement. We're already seeing that Pirlo is the type of manager who really wants to adapt his philosophy around his best players, which is what he has done with, in this case, Cristiano Ronaldo. Now, that adaptation can pay off, and I think it will pay off to a degree. However, Pirlo, he has never managed before. This is his first time ever facing the challenges of management. And when you're already straying away from your principles, I feel like that will mean that when you encounter situations which you have never encountered before, you're going to have to suddenly relearn a few things. And the thing is, Italy is very tactically gifted. It's a tactical league. He's bound to encounter situations which he has never encountered before. Yes, he was a smart player. Yes, he was a regista. Yes, that means that he has a lot of tactical knowledge. However, this is Italy. The smart people get chewed out alive in this league. We've seen plenty of managers go down there and fail. Will Juventus win the league? With all that I just said, I don't think that they would. However, Juventus have this culture and they have this core, which are of serial winners. Therefore, I don't think you can count Juventus out. I think this season, Juventus challenges for the title, but fails to win on the last hurdle. And as for Pirlo, if Pirlo fails to win the league, he gets the boot. This is Juventus. They're way too cutthroat. And this is Italy.
What do you think?
I mean, I agree with a lot of the points that you guys have made, but I think they do win the league. Firstly, because Pirlo has so much margin for error. He can make the wrong decisions and still win games. There's a lot of quality in that side, and it's only been 8 games. I think they will win the league. Pirlo will stay. I think eventually the cracks will show. He is a young manager, and the point that you made before about ignoring a manager like Poch, who has that profile, I think it will bite back in the future. But I think this season, I think Juventus have too much quality. I don't know how long the Italian season is, but over 38 game season, I think the cream always rises, and Juve will win it, and Pirlo will be at Juventus next season.
Yeah. So how about talking about Pochettino and talking about clubs which have been linked to Pochettino, Manchester United.
Here we go, lads.
Right. How about we talk a bit about what's going on with United, about rumors with Pochettino, and what's going on with Pogba, especially Pogba.
Oh man,
go on, Ali.
Right.
Oh, beautiful side. I want that for another 10 years, mate. We suffered 30 years. You gotta
I don't understand. At least 20. It's nearly been 10. That's the worst thing about it. The prime of my life and the club's gone down the tosser. All right. So, Pogba. Obviously, I mean, it said he's got an ankle injury. I don't.
100 million. I just want to remind you his price.
No, that was 89 million, mate.
Well, with add-ons.
Well, let me.
Well, we're not paying any of those Premier League winning Champions League bonuses, mate.
I mean, you do say it's 100 million, 90 million, but has it been as bad as people have been made out? Because he played a key part
this season. Yes, he's been
season, yes, but
terrible.
when he joined in the 16-17 season, the season we won the Europa League and the League Cup, and
the Community
the following
Shield,
season we finished second.
And then you sacked Jose.
And then we sacked Jose. But those 2 seasons were important, and he played a big part in those 2 seasons. And maybe you could say if he wasn't there,
I mean, I guess it's all
maybe the fall would have been much bigger.
And
maybe the actual failure right now would be so much worse.
It's all fine and well going on about what's happened before, but like I'm more interested in what's happening right now. And right now we're looking at a Paul Pogba who went to France and said, "This is a breath of fresh air. I like the vibe here. It's nice. We're so tight knit. It's such a great community." He plays all games. He plays 90 minutes against Sweden. He comes back to Manchester and then he's got an ankle injury and now he's not available for any games. He misses out.
And this is United. This is United. This is along with Liverpool and Arsenal, one of the 3 biggest clubs in England and one of the biggest clubs in the world.
The biggest club in England.
Come on, mate. Come on, mate.
Well, let's
6 European titles. 6 European titles.
Let's get the technicalities out of the way.
All right, but still, the point is, this is a massive club. This is one of the biggest clubs in the world. And do you take antics like that?
I don't. Do think you take? I think it was quite disrespectful. Now I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Translations can be a bit here or there, and if I was a media outlet, I'd be thinking, "What's the worst form of translation I could give this and put out?" But ultimately, it does look suspicious. It's looking pretty sus, boys. He's not been a part of the squad since he's come back with an ankle injury, despite not showing that sort of thing. In games before, he's been completely absent. I'm still sticking by Jesse Lingard would contribute more to the team than Paul Pogba right now. I just think the writing's on the wall for him, and to be honest with you, I think we'll still sell him for a high amount because it is Paul Pogba at the end of the day.
I think it's game over now, to be honest with him.
I mean, I think the games that he's played, he hasn't done as bad as people made him out to be. But yeah, I don't think he's relative to the players he has around him. I don't think when he joined he was a certain starter, but right now when you have players like McTominay, he's not Pogba, but he's sort of risen in his game. He's a young player from the academy.
You have other players. They play different roles.
Maybe you can compare him to someone like Bruno Fernandes.
Yeah, Bruno.
In terms of star power.
You have Fernandes, Van der Beek, who's come back. I know he hasn't started.
Here's the thing: he
isn't the same player he was when he joined.
Yeah,
but here's the thing: when Pogba joined, he was one of the best midfielders in the world. We have to remember he won, I think, World 11 of the year.
But he lived up to that. He you could say without him, we had a strong season, as I mentioned before, in 17 and 18. If he wasn't there, we don't have those 2 seasons.
Well, how much do you credit that? How much do you credit that to Pogba, or how much do you credit that to Jose?
Well, I think a manager can only do as well as his players. As Pep mentions it all the time, you're only as good as your players. And of course, a manager can support that. And there's good managers and there's bad managers. But I think Pogba did play a key part in that season. There was a lot of players around him that were deadwood. I mean, if you look at the players that played for Man United in 2017, look where they play now.
Yeah, you
realize
Darmian, who has been around the
Ender Herrera at PSG, boys.
That was a mistake.
I like that.
Yeah, some of the players that we were given opportunities to around about them times as well. We had Fosu Mensah playing a little bit. We even had players like Tyler Blackett coming in around sort of that time as well.
I mean, Maldini Guire captaining the side right now.
Maldini Guire. But yeah, no, it's a tough one to think about, but ultimately, I'm not trying to say that Paul Pogba's a bad player, but what I am saying is he clearly does not want to be there. And when you've got a player who is more of a liability now than what he's offering the team, like it's done. Like You've got players who clearly want to start. Donny van de Beek looks sadder and sadder every week on the bench. And when he's coming on, he's contributing a lot more.
He's
I think
quality.
you need to show a bit of bottle. Whether if he's not injured and he comes back if he is injured, and he comes back into the team, then I will lose a bit of respect for Ole for not dropping him, for not being good enough, because he hasn't been good enough. And you can say he's not been as bad as other players, but other players aren't Paul Pogba. If Scott McTominay has a bad game, I can accept that, because he's not the 90 million player who's come in, who was part of that World 11, who we know has quality, but just doesn't look like they can be asked about it at all.
I didn't see what's wrong with him not starting for Man United. Yeah, starting for France. So what's wrong with it being, say, Ali saying, okay, you don't fit the system I'm trying to play, but there's nothing wrong with you being on the bench. Compared to him starting for France.
It's not starting.
It's more his antics. It's more his antics. It's the fact that he's basically, kind of talking shit about United.
He's talked shit about United the past 2 times he's been on international duty. And he went on to international duty this time, said, being with these boys is a breath of fresh air, and we're so together, we're so tight-knit, it's really good to be here. Throwing a bit of shade, but you could argue maybe the translation was iffy, whatever. But then to play those 3 games and then not be part of any squad because of an ankle injury, which wasn't really present at all. He played them 90 minutes against Sweden. I think that's a bit too much of a coincidence. He hasn't been involved. And you know what? If he is playing for France and not for Man United, that's all fine and well. But the fact of the matter is, for 300k a week, you should be playing week in, week out. You should be putting a 7, an 8, or a 9 in. And that's not what we're seeing. We're not seeing that quality come through when he has been playing. And now he's gone and took shit. It seems like he's been out the team. Maybe.
Right. And also, here's the thing. Look at who his agent is. Right?
Mina Raiola, yeah.
Everyone knows who his agent is.
But here's another thing I want to ask, right? Say Ole gets the boot at the end of the season or whenever, and Pochettino replaces him. What happens to Pogba then? Does he stay? Does he become, a star player for United again, or is he still going to go out?
I mean,
I think Pochettino's more cutthroat. I think Pochettino got rid of a lot of players at Tottenham.
Yeah.
So I think it's a very yes or no decision for a guy like Pochettino. Does this guy make the squad better? Yes, he's in. He starts. If the answer is no, he's out.
If you were Pochettino and you can turn any player around, or you can turn most players around and really, make a title challenging side, do you keep Pogba around?
It depends on his attitude for me. Like, if you're looking at a player like Paul Pogba who doesn't look like he can be asked right now, if he can't be asked because he just doesn't want to be at Manchester United anymore, then you put him out there, you sell him. Me and Raiola will be able to get a good deal for him because that's what he's good at. And you wash your hands. But if Pogba wants to be there, but for one reason or another it's not working out, maybe he doesn't have faith in Ole. And if he doesn't have faith in Ole, from what I've seen, I don't know if you can particularly blame him. Like, the example I keep using is when we play Juan Mata on the right wing, when we play Dan James on the right wing, we don't see any tactical differences. That's a bit of a problem for me when you've got Dan James who only has speed and Juan Mata who has everything but speed, sort of thing. When you're looking at that position.
And also just look at what Pogba said about the whole tight knit part of it. I think that really sticks out to me. Is Ole really? Is he really the guy who is able to bring a squad together? Is he someone who's a dressing room manager? Is he good at managing a dressing room?
I think we've seen him lose. We saw him lose against Istanbul, and I was looking at the post-match conference they had. And he had this massive grin on his face. And I swear to God, I've never wanted to slap somebody more. You've just lost against a team you should be playing the under-23s against.
Mate, it's the Turkish champions.
Turkey, I don't, okay.
It's hard.
Who's in Turkey?
It's hard to...
Their best player is a player who was in the Premier League 7 or 8 years ago. Who's past it now? Demba.
Gervinho used to play for them.
I don't care who does play for them. Gervinho couldn't cut it at Arsenal. This is the thing. And when you've got this manager stood there with a massive grin, like, yeah, fantastic, or whatever he says, it's just annoying. And it's like,
well, it's a very, you're attaching sort of outcomes to reasons there.
What do you mean?
Because you're saying just because he looks like he's smiling on the outside.
That doesn't fill
Well,
me with confidence as a fan.
It doesn't fill you
Yeah,
confident.
Tell me
with confidence.
something. Tell me
It doesn't
something.
feel-
He goes home.
him-
He goes home and cries in the corner.
Would you ever?
It doesn't fill you with confidence.
Could you ever
But
see?
you don't know what he's
Could
like
you
in the
ever,
dressing room.
ever? I don't know what he's like in the dressing room. But I'm taking it from what I
Exactly.
can see.
Yeah,
That's
it's
the
a
only thing.
very, it's
And
a
what I'm
very
seeing
small
is,
amount.
what
of
I'm seeing
information.
is Sir Alex Ferguson, Jose Mourinho, whoever, probably wouldn't have lost that game. And if they did lose that game, do you think they'd be doing
They
the press
wouldn't be
conference with a
smart.
massive grin?
Absolutely not. But you can't make
Would
that assumption.
name one top class manager who'd be smiling after getting spanked by Istanbul?
Mate,
Well,
remember Klopp
nobody.
after Villa.
Exactly.
Klopp after Villa held his players in there for another like half an hour, just berating them, and then just had them run and absolutely destroyed them during training next day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You're
Well,
not.
no, but
I'm not.
my
seeing that
point
from
is,
Ole.
okay, so he's a nice. He might. He's not this obviously at the same level of the managers that you mentioned. But all I'm saying, the point I make, is that his post-match interview, it's not enough information for you to then say he's not a manager who can pull a dressing room together. I think there's other things that have signified that. Absolutely, you look at players like Pogba who've been out, etc.
The results that we get against small teams signifies it, and when we do,
Yeah,
have him
exactly. So
smiling,
that's more
that's
of
just
a-
that's just the icing on the cake. That's the breaking point for me personally. You know, we're looking at a manager who can do X, Y, and Z against Paris Saint-Germain and do something.
Mhm.
You know, I mean,
Against Leipzig, against Nagelsmann.
Well, to be fair, 100% we should be beating Leipzig anyway with the team we've got compared to the team that they've
But
got.
It's Nagelsmann.
It
Man.
doesn't
He's
matter.
such a brilliant coach.
For me, it doesn't matter who it is in
not
terms
to
of
mention
coach.
that Leipzig
We've got
beat
quality.
Spurs last season.
Yeah,
Convincingly.
I could have beat Spurs last season.
The semi-finals of the
convincingly.
UCL last season.
I could have beat Spurs convincingly last season, boys. But the
No,
thing
but
is,
still, beating Leipzig is impressive because this is a team which was in the semi-final of the Champions League
I mean,
last
yeah,
year.
okay, beating PSG and beating Leipzig is impressive, but what's not impressive is losing to Crystal Palace,
Yeah.
Yeah.
losing to Newcastle consistently over the last few seasons, having Glenn Murray back heel a nice little one into the back of the net. A couple.
So
like a
what's
season
the
ago.
difference between United going against the big boys versus United going against average teams?
I
or
think it's
the
clear
small boys?
that Ole is not capable of motivating a squad when it comes to these smaller games, and that's what counts. But I don't care right now about beating Man City like we did last season. I don't care about being the first team to take points away from Liverpool last season. The fact of the matter is, if you want to be at the top end of the table,
I have a trophy
you
for that.
you can. Have you got a trophy for what?
Being the first
Shaking-
team to take points
Yeah,
off Liverpool.
it's like
Oh mate,
but like, you know,
30 years.
that's all fine and well, you know, getting the steak and that every now and then, but the other days when you got to have your bread and butter, boy, you're gonna starve if you don't have it ultimately. And we're looking at teams that we should be beating, and we're not beating them. At the end of the day, if I'm thinking about we can beat the top 6 teams, but we're not beating anyone below that, or it's questionable, you get relegated. That's not enough points in a season.
That's what Klopp had to deal with when he first came to Liverpool. Like we were tying to West Brom and losing to Crystal Palace, especially Crystal Palace, all the time. But we were able to fight against the really big teams. It just took time. It took us a few years to finally develop that mentality of, hey, no matter who we play, we're gonna go out there and kill them.
But like, you still came fourth. United were 50th.
United came third. They came third last
They
year.
came third last year, and Project Restart did help us as a club. Before, if it wasn't for Project Restart and the whole reset, I don't think we would have got top 4 personally.
Do you think Ole gets
we
sacked
came
if
out-
there's no Project Restart?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, it's tough
You-
to say, right?
Do you think he gets
Um,
sacked this season?
I'm surprised he hasn't been sacked already when we were sat 15th. I'm surprised that, you know, especially when Pochettino is on Sky Sports saying, maybe I'll be in red next time you see me. I'm surprised Woodward didn't, you know, give him a bell there and then.
Maybe after Christmas. Maybe he just wants his
maybe-
kids to buy some Christmas
yeah,
gifts. You know?
maybe, yeah. Get the PS5 for your little one and then you're gone. But yeah, I'm surprised it's not happened already. And I'd be surprised if we have Ole in by the end of the season. Personally,
Well, let me
I'll
ask
be
you
even
this.
more surprised if he's still there next.
Let me ask you this. So how much time extra do you think Ollie's had from him being a club legend? Because if this was, say, your normal a Louis van Gaal type manager, so say if it was Poch and he had the results up till now, how much more stick do you think he'd be getting?
I think it would have been gone by this point now. By this point, maybe last season, maybe towards February.
He'll be gone by now for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, where they're sitting right now on the table,
10th.
I think anyone else disappears.
I saw a stat for Man United managers being sacked, and no manager has been sacked at this stage this early. And you've got to remember that this season started later, so you got to give it. So for it to be a sort of so for him to be sacked now, that's a huge deal. It's only been however many games. It hasn't been.
It's
long.
been 9 games.
The reason I bring that up is because Pochettino is out here saying, "Hey, United, me and United, we're talking. Me and United, I want to be there." That's the reason why I'm saying that Ole is probably getting sacked soon.
The thing is, benefit to Ole if he does win, because United have played 8 games right now. The majority of the rest of the league has played 9. If he does get a win, he goes to 6th on goal difference, and he's only 4 points behind top spot. So maybe looking at this season standalone might be unfair, but when you look at what the sort of games we've played, I'll go into Manchester United. We'll run through the teams that we've played thus far this season. So let's go back to the start of the season, and the first game we played against was we played Aston Villa. We lost 1-0. Should be winning that game every day of the week.
Mate, they beat Liverpool 7-2.
And they beat Arsenal. They're a world-class side.
3-0.
World-class side, yeah. They're better than Real Madrid for sure.
I mean, what even is the Bayern?
But this is the thing. This is the thing, right? We lose 1-0 against Aston Villa. We then lose 3-1 against Crystal Palace. We then beat Brighton 3-2 after scoring a penalty that took place after the final whistle went. Let's not forget about that. We then lose 6-1 against Spurs. We then
6-1 against Spurs. Let me just say
that. Let's skip over that one.
We then beat Newcastle 4-1, but to be fair, it is Steve Bruce's Newcastle. He would have got sacked if he lost there. We beat Newcastle 4-1, mate. It's not impressive. We have the PSG game. We win 2-1. Fantastic performance. We then go to Chelsea.
I think at that stage it was like, Ollie's turning go around here.
We then play Chelsea 0-0, and it's a disgraceful game. The play was poor. We then play Leipzig. We win 5-0. We then play Arsenal, who have been on the rocks, and we get outclassed many, many times in that game. We lose 1-0. We then lose against Istanbul, and then that brings us to the win against Everton, the win against West Brom, who have not won a game, and it took a penalty to do it, and a penalty which West Brom could have potentially had to get turned around, and then we have this result. Are you looking at that list and telling me that we should have, let's see what we've done. Are you looking at that list and telling me we should have lost 3, drawn 1, and won 4?
I look at the list. No. I look at the list and I go, that's completely fine for a club, say like Augsburg, or a club like Villarreal, but United.
No, not in the slides. You look at that list and I'm thinking the only potential game we should be dropping points against is Chelsea. Potentially the only game we should be dropping points. We have not played Tottenham. We have not played Liverpool. We've not played Leicester. We're about to play Southampton. We haven't played Man City, but to be fair, Manchester City are 13th right now, which I think they're not getting any slack for. But
Manchester,
we've not played the teams that are currently at the top end and doing the best. We're playing against teams that are lower bottom, looking at relegation in, Brighton, Newcastle, and West Brom. And we're not doing it. Crystal Palace, currently 2 games ahead of us, 1 point ahead. It's like you can't look at me and say, well, we're going to be 6th when we haven't really played anyone other than Chelsea yet. I don't think you could put Arsenal in that bracket because they've got their own problems. But, I don't think
Arsenal beat you guys, to be fair.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. We're losing against these teams. That's exactly my point. We're losing against these teams.
What if United finish top 4 this season? Does Ole stay then?
He stays.
I think, he probably will stay if he gets top 4.
Top 4 is a long shot right now.
Yeah, we're looking.
And if it's at what stage does he get sacked then? What conditions have to be met?
If we get 19 games in and we're not in the top 8, I think it is criminal if he doesn't.
I think if we continue with the current form, he'll be sacked.
Because we haven't
Probably after
played
Christmas.
some of the better teams the league's had to offer this year.
But that isn't necessarily a bad thing for us. It's usually the smaller games, and we have suffered at this stage. As you said, we were lucky against West Brom. You had the Villa game, you had the Palace game.
Yeah, basically you're naming all the games that we've won as or got
We
points.
lost to Villa. I mentioned Villa. I'm mentioning your point here. That the fact that we have the fact that we have tough games coming up isn't the worst thing for us.
And the games that we have won, let's see, Newcastle, if you remember correctly in that game, we scored, we were 1-1 until the 86th minute, and then we scored 3 goals in 10. Like, it wasn't exactly...
Okay, so let me ask you this.
Mm.
All right, to both of you, where do you see United finishing this season? And and you've already answered this earlier a little bit, but if and when does he get sacked this season?
I'll let Rich go first.
Say Ole is not sacked all season, right? Nothing changes. And we have to remember, this is a very competitive league. This is a league where Man City is sitting where? 13th?
13th right now, but they do have 2 games.
Manchester City. But still, you know, this is a league where Southampton is bossing, right? Where Everton is was looking dangerous. Thankfully, not no more. And Pickford, that criminal. You know, this is a very competitive. This is a very, very competitive league. Manchester United finishing even within the top 8 right now, mate. Look at the top 8. Look at how competitive it is. There's at least 8 teams in this league who can remotely challenge for the title to some extent, or at least challenge for top 4. You know, you can even argue that there's really not a big 6 anymore, but a big 10. When teams like Leeds, who've just been promoted, are playing as good as they are, I mean, United finishing even in the top 6 or the top 8 right now, it just looks bleak. I think United, if nothing changes, United finish in the top 10, but outside of the top 8.
I would say I can't see us getting. I think we'll struggle to get Europa League football the way things are going, because we haven't played anyone who's had a remarkably good season yet. The only team that we've played that have been up there is Chelsea, and they should have beat us. And
Spurs 6-1.
Yeah, we've already established we're not talking about that one. You know,
you keep forgetting that you have played Spurs, and it was a brilliant game. I shut that part of my life out. Honestly. Remember when Jose used to coach Manchester United, and now he's beating them 6-1?
I could not imagine him looking happier than he did, you know, in the dressing room after that game.
It has to be like the best revenge story.
Yeah,
and Ole replaced Jose, right? There was no one in the middle.
There was no interim. Ole was the interim, and he won like 5 games on the bounce. And
Bottle FC,
well,
giving you the bottle.
Here's where I'll say we'll finish. I think I agree with both of you. For probably the first time today. that we'll probably end up. I think we could snatch Europe. Yeah, I'd say 6th or 7th, but I think Ole will be gone maybe by New Year's.
Newcastle are 1-0 up, by the way. They've just scored against Palace, so you know, they're above us now. We're 11th.
Nail in the coffin.
As I was saying, Steve Bruce's Newcastle are currently above us.
Steve Bruce's
Newcastle are currently above United, Arsenal, and Manchester City, boys. So let's put some respect on Stevie Bruce's
so
name.
Clearly, Steve Bruce is like 10 times better than Guardiola. He can do it in the Prem regularly.
Well, with that goal just going in, Manchester City have dropped to 14th now.
Wow.
De Bruyne's average. How can you be 14th?
You know what? Can we talk about Manchester City real quick? Can we talk about Pep and the rebuild he's kind of failing at right now, at least in the short term?
I'm shocked that Bernardo Silva's still in that squad, and Foden is.
Well, no, you say that, but he was their best. Well, according to Pep, right, he was their best player in the 19th season where they won the league. And in my opinion, I'd agree with
that.
That
was like 2 seasons.
But he has a lot of points in the bank.
The most notable thing that Bernardo Silva has done in the last 2 seasons was post a racist picture of Mendy, mate. I don't think. I don't.
Wait,
I
can we
don't
talk about
think-
Mendy as well? Can we also talk about Mendy?
Does he still play football?
I mean, mate, I don't know. He might be a full-time Twitter personality at this point. Hey, Mendy, what a guy!
Oh, he
He's
doesn't-
won the World Cup.
oh,
He's won 2 back-to-back Premier League titles. He's won the quadruple, and he's played like maybe 2 minutes.
I mean, Wes Brown has won a few Premier League titles as well. John O'Shea's won a few. Tom Cleverley won one. So it's
But
out of the
a World
ordinary,
Cup, a
be
World Cup
fair.
on top of that,
That
and a
is true.
quadruple.
And a quadruple. Oh man, I don't know, man.
Mate,
It's-
he literally didn't even tell the team, and just next thing you know, he's in China or in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And then the journalist's like, "Hey, Pep, what do you think about Mendy out in Hong Kong?" He's like, "Wait, he's in Hong Kong?" What?
I thought he was in France.
It's like he told me he was going.
Nah.
Mate, it's great to see though. I think this is the most tested Guardiola's ever been. and-
he's sinking. Who City played?
Is he thinking, or is it just cycles, as we mentioned before?
I
You know,
mean,
he won 2
Well,
leagues in a
City,
row.
the core of City is slowly is mostly gone, and the last really remnant of that, or the great remnant, is Aguero. But even he's being phased out. This is no longer that great City team of the 2010s. Now it's Guardiola's City team of the 2020s. This is a new batch of players. Now, granted, guys like Kevin De Bruyne, guys like Bernardo Silva, they've been there for a while. However, the core of that team, really, that spine is changing. I mean, remember when Lampard retired from Chelsea, or sorry, not retired, when he left Chelsea, when Chelsea lost, and then Terry left, right? After Terry left, that spine of Chelsea was gone, and for a while it was a little bit shaky.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And do you think he deserves more credit? So do you think he deserves the time?
I mean, for sure, he's won them a quadruple. He's won them 2 Premier League titles, and he was in the quarterfinals of the Champions League last year.
So let's have this one for Manchester City. Then. So where do you think where are we seeing these guys finishing as a final
I mean,
question?
I think it's key to remember they've got 2 games in hand. I mean, United have, but I just don't have the same faith. I'd be very surprised if they're outside of the top 3.
I'd say maybe top 4.
Top 4. Yeah, I can't see them finishing below Chelsea and Leicester and Southampton or any of those guys. I think dependent on Tottenham and Liverpool will be a big test now that they're going to be playing players no one's ever heard of at centre back. Newcastle are 2-0 up, by the way, now. I think, with those factors included, I can't imagine a scenario where they're not finishing above these guys. Liverpool, perhaps we'll see how that plays out. Tottenham, again, we'll see how that plays out. And as good as Mourinho's been right now, we can't forget his temperamental reputation that he does have. So, I mean, it'll be a long test for the season, mate. I'm not too sure. But
Yeah,
it's
I'm
going to have to
excited
be
for
a
it.
wait and see. Yeah, it's looking like a very exciting
Very
season.
competitive.
I'm
Yeah.
hoping
Everything is wide open.
I'm hoping it's Leicester 2.0, but
No.
I'm
I'm hoping that Pickford breaks his ankle sometime soon,
yeah,
right?
that's
And-
it, you know.
and Liverpool just win the league again.
Listen, mate. If Pickford breaks his ankles, then Everton probably finish higher up because he'll have a better keeper.
Like,
in there.
Pickford, if you're listening.
Do you
I mean, if you are listening, please
yeah,
share this.
Share this, bro.
I know we just said if we hope you break your legs.
I mean, Resh did. I hope you don't.
Yeah, I hope you don't. If you're listening, guys.
If
If
you're
you're not,
listening.
then
If you're not, I couldn't give 2 shits. But if you are,
Pickford, just know the next time you play Liverpool, there's a massive target on your little arms.
yeah, good luck getting to them. They're too small, bro. But yeah, is there anything else we really want to talk about? Because I feel like this maybe went on a little bit longer. I know we still have a couple of things on the agenda, but I feel like we could push those sort of back for another
we can
date, really.
talk about FM when Stick comes back, because we
Yeah.
know for the audience, Stick had to leave for an emergency. So when he's back, we can talk about FM later on.
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
absolutely. It would be important to have.
I
him
think-
because he is a pro.
he is. He's
And we will talk about your tough time at a streamer draft this week.
draft for the mention.
So don't think
right?
you'll
Get
get
the
away
name
with
right.
that
Yeah, nah, fair. Well, to be fair, if we do end up having guests, a few of them could be in. But yeah, I think we do need to take a little bit of time out to give a shout out to that Curry man streaming on Twitch. He's also a musician, boys. He's come out with the jingle for this
podcast. Yeah,
this podcast. Yeah, and I mean, he hasn't charged us yet.
For as long as he doesn't charge us,
charge us, go see him.
Yeah, that Curry man on Twitch.
Well, let you know.
He streams FM.
He does stream FM, so yeah, make sure you check him out. Give him some love. But yeah, I've enjoyed that, boys. It went smoother.
Yeah,
I think as
solid.
time went on, it got a little more fluid. But yeah,
I really like the debates when we were having them and we were trying to talk over each other.
When we were doing the Juve thing, yeah, I got annoyed at that because I didn't. I
got annoyed at you.
But that's what you want.
How are you so blind?
Oh, wait, real quick. Let's just say the.
Yeah, I just like, if anyone wants to give us any general feedback on how it went in, comment section stuff would be appreciated, because obviously this is the first time I've ever done something like this. I can't speak for everyone else, but I think we're all pretty inexperienced with this sort of thing, so any advice and how people might be able to offer is great. And yeah, we'll be looking at getting guests out in the future, so if anyone has anyone in mind who could reach out, that would be pretty cash money, boys. But yeah,
thank you for listening to the 5 at the Back podcast. Alistair and Stick Piano stream on Twitch. You can check them out. I, Rish, write on Medium. You can also check me out. All of our socials are going to be in the description below. Also, please make sure to follow the Internet Herald, bringing you quality shows and providing information and understanding. We're on 11 different platforms, including Spotify and YouTube. So please, if you do enjoy, leave us a rating, leave us a follow. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.